I think get started, although we are expecting a few more people. And David, you'll just keep letting people in as they come. So in a moment, David is going to start sharing his screen. Before we do that, I'm just going to let you know, I'm Sandy Gold. I'm the Director of Jewish Education Programs here at Gateways. And today I'm so excited to be talking with all of you with Mia Hyman, who is our behavioral specialist, and Susan Morrel, who is one of our educational consultants and also a Hebrew College professional. And our recommendation is that you put yourselves on speaker view, because once David shares his screen, it will take up most of the screen. But if you stay on speaker view, the three of us are going to be sort of handing off the talk back and forth, and you'll be able to see whichever one of us is speaking and not have to try to identify our voices. So David, if you want to start screen sharing, that would be great. So just a quick little introduction. You know, when the world changed on all of us back in March, we at Gateways had to do exactly what you did, pivot really quickly, figure out how to get things online, do the best we could in this reactive kind of mode. And now that we're having a chance to step back, reflect, think about what's worked, what hasn't worked necessarily over the last 3 months, we were able to really pull together all of our observations. And when we were speaking with so many directors, and we realized that although we would love to be face-to-face in the fall, there's a really strong possibility that we're going to be online still for at least part of it. We really wanted to take this chance for all of us to collaborate, work together, and be as proactive as we can, not knowing exactly what the fall is going to look like. So that is how we came to put together what we are calling How to Effectively Support Diverse Learners Remotely. Okay, David, you wanna?
Great. All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Mia. It's nice to see some really familiar faces, but my guess is we don't know everybody who is on this call with us, and Zoom or any sort of online platform does make it feel like there might be a disconnect between everybody who is present. So we wanted to start out with a little activity to give us that sense of connection. So what's going to happen is David's actually going to put a link into the chat, and I'm going to ask you guys to click on it, and a screen is going to pop up on your computers. Oops, we went, there we go. It's going to come up on your computers, and a question is going to come up that says, what's the question? What color best represents the current mood that you are in? And we're talking about current mood in regards to all of the craziness that is kind of going on right now. Are you feeling great? Are you doing pretty well? Are you feeling like you're beginning to struggle? I'm having a really hard time would be blue, and red is I could really use some support. And what you'll see is a Wordle is going to be created for us, and everyone's going to see everyone's kind of mood. It's anonymous, so it's not going to say who is feeling what, but it kind of gives this sense of connection of, oh, you know, there's other people who are feeling in the blue or the red like I am right now, or okay, good, in this current state we're all in, there are people who are in the purple. And this is just a really nice online tool that you can use with your students as well to maybe start your lessons. You could even use it for academics if there was a question you wanted to ask them all, and to show who feels one way over another way. So is everyone seeing the screen and seeing it pop up? I see people starting to put their answers in. Make sure to type it into the bar on the actual screen that pops up in front of you, rather than in the chat, so that we can see everyone's responses. So lots of yellows. The answer that gets the most responses will be bigger than the answers that are a little bit smaller. So you can kind of see our Wordle growing in real time. my colleague Rebecca can put the choices up again in the chat because you guys won't be able to see it on the screen. So purple, I'm doing great. Yellow, I'm doing pretty well. Green, I'm beginning to struggle. Are we seeing it? David, are you refreshing it? Great. Good. So we'll give everyone just a moment to enter in their responses.
Mine won't let me type.
Oh.
Me too.
That is frustrating.
Mine won't
Me
either.
three.
Me also.
Oh, all right. Well, that is a good technical error we now know about.
I think, is it only allowed a certain amount of responses?
No, we had set it up so it could have as many as we wanted. At least I had thought we had, but that's good to know.
Have people copied the link and put it into their browser? That's what worked for me.
Yeah,
Yes,
I also, it has to do with cookies. It has to do with things that are getting blocked,
Okay.
depending on the web browser you're using.
So this is also a great
And I'm
example.
looking at it. If you rest your thing on it, there's 14 yellows, 8 greens, 2 blues. It's not putting them all.
Oh, it's not populating.
It's
them
not
all.
populating the way it goes. That's what's going on. It's collecting everybody's responses.
Not mine. It won't.
Not
let me
yours.
type
Okay.
anything.
You might need to refresh at the source.
So I think this is also a really great example of
Yep.
making sure that since we are online, that all your technology is working before you present it to the students.
Yep.
When it does work, it's really cool. I've done it with many students in the past, and they really like watching the words come up and seeing that there's a connection between, oh, there's other people who are thinking the same thing I'm thinking, or feeling the same thing I'm feeling, or responding the same way I am, and also seeing the differences and the contrast between the responses as well. So the website is called Answer Garden, so you can explore that on your own if you'd like. And hopefully it runs a little bit smoother for you than it did for us just now. Thank you for your flexibility and patience.
Great, thanks, Mia. So at Gateways, we are committed to continuing to support religious schools regardless of what our learning environment is going to look like in the fall. And so this is our first of what we hope will be more than one opportunity to support you as we are all learning new techniques. So along those lines, we also know that many of you have already discovered great strategies and tools that worked for you over the last weeks while you've been with your students online. So we are planning, this is our group plan that David's now put up on the screen. We have 9 areas that we're going to be exploring with you today. And our hope is that everybody is going to find something along the way. David, go back. Thank you. We'll find something in one of these categories or multiple categories that works for you and is something that will be helpful for your school. But we also know that you've already come up with strategies and have had successes. So if you would, as we hit these different categories, if something clicks in your head, like, wait, I've already figured out something else that really works, put it in the chat. Rebecca is monitoring our chat, and she is also creating a Google Doc. So your answers and suggestions will be recorded in a shareable document so that you'll be able to walk away with everybody else's suggestions as well at the end of our webinar today. Someone asked if this was being recorded. It is being recorded, so if for some reason you do not want to be seen, this is a good time to turn your video off. We also do have closed captioning available. If that is something that you want to make use of, just click the closed caption in your toolbar. Okay, so our first area that we are going to look at is re-examining school needs, and I am going to turn it over to Susan.
Hey everybody, it is really nice to be here with all of you today. So we're going to get started with re-examining school needs. I love this picture. I didn't quite get it at the very beginning, but we're moving from the chalkboard or the whiteboard onto the screen, as you can see from the picture. So You, the educators out in the field, really took heroic measures just a few months ago and quickly pivoted to online learning, just like this picture illustrates. You maintained connections. You did everything you could to meet the needs of the teachers, the students, and the families. You really held that space for them. You had really no choice but to be reactive because no one could have predicted what happened and really how fast. But now, where we are now, we have the gift of a little bit more time in the next few months for planning for the fall and the possibilities of remote learning scenarios. So now we can be more proactive in meeting the needs of the teachers, the students, and the families, and importantly, maintaining the standards of excellence that I know that we all want. So when first considering moving to a virtual platform, it's critical to think about a few questions, as you can see written up here. What new or different goals are you going to set, and do your expectations match this new setting? So things will not be the same in an online platform. It's too bad we can't just walk into it like that picture showed us. And we'll need to rethink our goals, our processes, our support systems, our curriculum, and much more. You know, so for example, if you think about a curriculum, you can take your values, your MEDO curriculum, and will that curriculum maintain the same goals and objectives that you have had in the past? Will students still learn 20 MEDO? Does that need to be adjusted? If yes, that they are still going to maintain that same goal, will they be able to realistically meet these same goals and objectives in this new online learning setting where there is, you know, certainly a condensed amount of time, less flexibility with space, as well as other positive things we can, you know, have more flexibility with. But if not, that's okay. You may not be able to accomplish the same goals remotely. We expect things, and I encourage you to, it's like a mantra, don't expect things to be the same. It is all new. Another question that is critical to think about is what type of training needs to be provided for the teachers. So as I'm sure so many of you have encountered already, all of our teachers don't have the experience and knowledge to create and facilitate online learning. It's a new type of teaching for many, and we need to support and guide our teachers to be successful. As our tradition teaches us, do not place a stumbling block before the blind. We want to maintain good instructional practice. We're not just moving our face-to-face curriculum and program online. That doesn't happen. We have created new programs and it requires new skills. But one thing we know for sure stays the same in these new online programs is that students have diverse learning needs and still need support.
Okay, so the second category that we want to draw your attention to is this idea about creating new family connections. And this is a topic we're gonna ask you to keep in the back of your minds throughout the rest of the work we do. Because one of the most important things we're gonna tell you today is that parents need to understand that religious school is not going to be a drop-off experience anymore for many of their children. And if they want their children to be engaged and involved and having a meaningful Jewish educational experience, they may have to now be actively involved in their child's learning. I'm going to take a second. I want you just to think about that. So many of our students were not independent learners in the classroom. They relied on teachers giving them a little extra support. They relied on an aide. They relied on a Teen Madrachim system that was giving them that sort of one-to-one extra help that they needed. So it's not realistic to assume that that same student who made use of all those supports when you were in your classroom are suddenly going to be able to learn independently sitting at home in front of a computer screen. And this is one of the biggest challenges we're finding for parents to understand that, and whether it's a parent or an older sibling, or as the world opens up a little bit, if a family is comfortable having a cousin or a babysitter coming in and out of their house, but that the child is going to need somebody sitting in that role of support while they're doing their learning. It might include, parent involvement might include printing and prepping materials in advance that the teacher sends home so that the child has what they need when it's time to do their work. It might be being an aide and sitting next to them and giving them physical prompts and supporting them during their learning. Those goals that we have for our individual students or that a parent has for their child might need to be readjusted, given what Susan talked about with curriculum changing. And we're not just taking our programs and moving them online, we are rethinking what we're doing. So in that same vein, what we expect of the students and what a parent might be expecting is very possibly going to change as well. And so those are all really hard questions that need to be thought through and talked about with a family. In a moment, Susan is going to share with you her experience of working with one of our students whose mom is playing an amazing supportive role to that student, and you're actually going to get to see a video clip. But before she tells you and shows you what's working so nicely now, I'm just going to share with you how we got there. Because when we first moved online and we reached out to this mom, this child is involved in the B'nai Mitzvah program, and we said, we are going to move online, this mom said, absolutely not. My child can't work online. He's not going to sit in front of a computer. This won't work. And then she emailed us and said, someone's going to have to keep working with him one-on-one. And we said, we absolutely work with him one-on-one. It's just going to be remote, and we're going to do it over Zoom. And she said, absolutely not. He can't do it. He can't do it. He can't do it. And then a week later, she said, well, when it became clear that this shutdown was more than just a couple of weeks, she said, okay, maybe we should try it, but I'm not holding out hope. Well, now we're going to fast forward a couple of months, and Susan is now going to show you just how successful this child is in doing his B'nai Mitzvah work remotely, and how amazing the mom is in being Susan's partner in this journey.
Go ahead, you can start, David.
Okay, Ethan, but you need to be looking down at your paper, and Mom is going to make sure that you're on the word that I'm singing.
You ready? Here.
I'm going to look at that first word.
You're looking in the kitchen. Here we go.
Matovu. You have a beautiful voice, Ethan. Thank you.
Nice.
Okay, so let me tell you a little bit about this. This student has very specific learning needs, and really the only way that we could achieve success is with his mother's support. And I have to be honest, at first I was like, oh my God, you're kidding me, she's gonna be on there every day. And I really felt a little bit vulnerable. That quickly passed, and we are truly partners. But again, we would not have been able to achieve the success that we have. So here are just a few things that the mom does. She gets, of course, the Zoom link going and ensures a distraction-free area for him. She redirects him very frequently when he's not focused. She helps to point to the Hebrew that we're working on. She takes notes on areas that he needs to practice more on. She supports him emotionally and physically. We often have to, stop and get a snack, get a glass of water. And she's also his biggest cheerleader. And, I know that we always say that parents are our partners. And I witness this now, that this is really a beautiful example of that practice. And this student and his mom have a very new relationship because of this, a very, intimate, authentic, just a beautiful relationship working together.
So another critical way that we can help parents in this new role that they might be taking on is to provide them with the coaching and the strategies and the visual tools that they may need to help their child be successful. So it's not just like we don't expect children to suddenly know all the new rules and know everything that's expected of them. We teach it to them. We have to coach the parents. And Susan's has shown how absolutely amazing it can be when you take the time to do that. Here are 2 examples of checklists. One of the ways that a parent can really be your partner is to make sure that their children have an appropriate workspace to be working in. I was on a call with some day school special educators the other day, and one of them was saying, how on earth do we get the parent to understand that if they set their child up to work at the kitchen table, they shouldn't be emptying the dishwasher at the same time that he's in math class? And that same thing is true with our religious schools. This is one way of helping the parents understand what the children need to be successful. We had a boy who a few weeks ago tried to log into one of our classes. The dad is telling us online doesn't work. Well, he had his child log in from an iPad while sitting in the sandbox in their playset in the backyard. So when you can provide a visual and a structure for the parents, that is one of the ways that they will then be able to help their child find a way to be most successful. Sally, I saw that you wanted these checklists. There is we created a folder on our website, and all of these resources that we are sharing with you are available on our website in that folder. You can just download it and print it out for yourself. And we'll try to remember as we go through to tell you which of the resources that are there, but this is definitely one of the ones that are on our website.
Can I offer a quick suggestion here? If you know how to take a screenshot, so if you're working on an Apple, Command-Shift-3 will save the screen that you're looking at onto your desktop, and you'll be able to come back to it later.
Command-Shift-3, good for me to know. Okay. You might also want to think about making this as easy for parents as possible. Maybe your school will invest in clear boxes that can become the child's toolkit. And you start each child off at the start of the year with a toolkit with, pens, markers, flashcards, whatever those tools are that they're going to need for their class repeatedly throughout the year. You could put a checklist on the top of the toolbox so that they know it's always supposed to be in there, so at the end of a session when they go to clean up, the right things go back into their toolkit. You could even decorate it, have the teachers decorate it and get it ready and make it kind of special so that the students are then excited to use it. Any of these kind of ideas and strategies will help you and the parent be able to set the child up for success.
Okay, we're going to spend a few minutes talking about what I know so many of you are already addressing, the social and emotional needs of your students. So I witnessed this over and over again when all of you, again, we use this word so frequently, but you quickly pivoted to the online platform. And even when you weren't able to maintain the same knowledge and understanding goals, you were able to maintain the connections with the students, which is really critical. So we're preparing our students for an uncertain future. Certainly that is, we know that now. But one thing we know for sure is the importance of caring relationships and how those will remain constant. And so the social and emotional competencies are basic foundational skills to academic achievement. So social emotional learning starts with self-awareness, including the ability to recognize and name one's emotions, just like we did at the beginning of this call when we provided you an opportunity to tell us how you were doing by naming it by color. When a student can first recognize how they are feeling, they can then begin to manage those emotions. And right now we are dealing with a lot of feelings and emotions. They're coming at us so quickly, just so rapidly. So just as we need to address these needs in face-to-face settings, we even more so need to address them in an online platform. Students bring their whole selves to learning, whether, just like all of us, whether that's anxiety, anger, happiness, sadness, and a student or a teacher who is feeling a lot of anxiety and worry is not able to learn as well. David, I'm going to have you click forward. Okay. So let's try a quick exercise here. I'm going to have you take a look at this chart on your screen and choose a word which describes how you're feeling right now, just right now sitting here. And I'm going to have you type it into the chat. If a word comes to your mind that is not on the chart, go ahead and use that word. So let's all just take a minute to do that. Just going to read them off as we go a little bit. I see enraged, optimistic, inspired, grateful, restless, nervous, at ease, energized, drained, restless, at ease, drained, optimistic, motivated, frightened, drained again, energized, drained again, grateful, tired, blessed, mopey, love that one, motivated, at ease, worried, apprehensive. It goes on and on and on. So this is a tool, I use it quite frequently. It can be used for you as a teacher to take a temperature of the room and for students to help them be aware of and build an emotional vocabulary so that they can identify what is going on in their body and mind. You know, they might think, oh, like I'm so bored right now, but is it really that they're bored or is it like they're frustrated? So this really helps them build that emotional vocabulary. It works really well for teens as they often do not have the opportunity to express their feelings. And again, it's good to know where you are as a teacher. You can feel more than one emotion at a time, like we are experiencing right now in this moment. And we just heard when I read off some of those, I can feel, for myself, I feel very blessed for my health and well-being, but I am enraged simultaneously at what is happening around us. David, I'm gonna have you go back to that one again, because I just wanna do one more thing. So importantly, teachers and students, anyone can experience emotions in all four quadrants in a very short period of time. And just to let you know, we call it a mood meter, sort of with temperatures. If you look at the upper left hand, the red is low in pleasantness, but high in energy. The yellow is high in energy and high in pleasantness. The blue is low energy and low in pleasantness, and green is low energy and high in pleasantness. So this helps you take a temperature of the room. You can use this as a whole class or individually. And very importantly, you can use it in your curriculum. Think about, how is Moses feeling as he was staring at the burning bush? You know, there are many ways, and you can pull up this mood meter. Okay, you can go on to the next one now. Great. So there are a whole bunch of different kinds of mood meters. There are some that are in Hebrew. There are some like this that could be used for younger children, or really for anybody who is going to respond better by pictures. But there are many, many of them out there. Okay, you can go ahead. Okay, so it's great to ask the kids how they're doing, but we don't want to just leave it right there. If we don't address their response, just knowing how they're feeling is not going to be enough to put them in a good space. So again, students need to feel safe and cared for, whether it is in a classroom or online. And here's a quick checklist of ways that we can do that. So the first one is, quietly checking in via chat. right? I mean, I know that somebody on here, her birthday is coming up in a couple of days, and that's something that I could put on there. Maybe she's feeling really excited. Checking in before, after class. I always like to open up the class early, and I like to keep the chat open because I want to encourage people to talk to one another. You can check in by email, phone, FaceTime, snail mail, any way that you want. Listening and watching. It is very different to listen and watch online than it is in person. It is it's very intense. I'm sure many of you know after you get off a call or several Zoom calls, how drained you are. So you have to listen with much more intent. You need to really watch or listen to tone of voices, watch for facial expression, watch for people that are not participating or not showing up. It's a very different kind of listening and watching. Pausing, using wait time, showing empathy, breathing, meditation. I do that quite frequently with the student that we saw the video of. If I feel the energy, you know, really building or, you know, a lack of focus, we will stop and we'll quickly breathe in through our nose and out through our mouth. Taking a break. I saw some people had put questions before about incorporating movement. Get up, stand up, stretch, do another movement, you know, do any type of breathing exercise or meditation. Modeling behavior and problem solving. So we need to model how we manage our own emotions, especially when we are feeling anxious. My 2 lessons ago with this student, my computer was not behaving in a way that it ever had before. I could feel my entire body tightening up, and I had to be very conscious of that. I had to breathe, and I had to say to my student, you know, thank you so much. My computer it's really not working as well as it should right now, so it's going to take me a little bit longer. And finally, providing opportunities for reaching out privately. So in a face-to-face class, I've had students come to me and say, Susan, can I just talk to you for a minute and we can sneak off to the side? That doesn't happen online, so you need to create other opportunities. And you can create those yourself, but you need to communicate those to your students. Okay, we can go on to the next one. Okay. So not only do we want to build connections and really build relationships with ourselves, but we want to build them with one another. Building it with ourselves, again, it's about self-awareness, and with others, it's really about relationship building skills. So building connections and building relationships are a preventative strategy to a lot of behavior issues. So many times, you know, I hear, can you help me? Like this student just keeps acting out and they keep doing this and they keep doing that. And it's not a magic wand. It comes from building these skills in very early and building these relationship skills. So again, when students feel cared for and connected, they are able to learn. So I like this visual. So how can we take their hearts and their souls as well as their minds and support those? Because when we support them emotionally, they can learn much better. So one of the ways is opening up class early. I know that in the chats we have here, typically we would open it up to everyone because we want to encourage you to talk to everybody. So I would do that. A lot of people are hesitant to do that with students. I strongly encourage it. It's a chance to schmooze. It's like a student showing up to class early and they can catch up with a friend. Staying on till everyone has left. It's really just being a polite host. I mean, if you had people over to your house, which is you could just go upstairs and put on your jammies, even though you probably want to once in a while, you're going to stay there until everyone has left. Sharing appreciation. You can use the clapping symbols that are on the Zoom screen. I teach students how, I don't know if you can see me, but to go like this and to wave with their hands if they are muted. Any opportunity to share appreciation for one another. Sending snail mail, there is nothing like getting a package in the mail. I can tell you for adults, for children, it doesn't matter who it is. Send a bingo board or something else that will be used in the following week during class if you want. Creating pen pals across grades or within grades. Planning an art project or a story that gets sent from student to student and each one adds to it. And then planning for extra time in breakout rooms. So my very wise friend, Rebecca Redner, just said to me yesterday, you know that they're going to chit chat. So just plan for it. They're going to do it anyway. Let them chat, encourage that connection. So all of these are tools to build connections and relationships that are going to support your learning goals in your online class.
Great, thank you, Susan. And this idea about establishing connections needs to be expanded into establishing support systems. And these are support systems from a director to a teacher, teacher to her and his students, or to parents. There's so much new going on and so much information that has to be shared and kept track of that establishing these support systems will really help avoid some of the confusion, a lot of the emails we get later. I didn't know what to do, so I just logged off. You know, all those things that we used to do when we were face-to-face, we have to be proactive in thinking about them differently. So some of the things that you could think about incorporating into your plans for your remote learning going forward are a buddy system, pairing students up. Every student gets another buddy, and this buddy could be for very different roles depending on what your needs are in the classroom or what that student's needs are. If you have someone who's really competent with technology and someone who has made it very clear that they're really not comfortable with technology, buddy them up so that that student has somebody that they can go to and ask a quick question and get support. The buddy could be for content. It could be for social emotional reasons. It's really could be for any one of these needs that we have within the classroom, but then that student knows that he's got someone to go to all the time. A flow chart outlining the steps that a student or their family or a teacher should take if they need help is really important. This is where we have to be proactive and think through all the what ifs and write them down and give solutions before the problem happens. And so many of you were already using teens as your module in the classrooms, and we need them now as just as much, if not more, than we needed them in the classroom. Sandy Inchop put into the chat that using your teens to monitor what's going on can be a really helpful thing. It's really hard to be the teacher if you're leading the class to also be aware of all these things going on in a little square on a Zoom screen. So having your teens be on the lookout for certain behaviors, certain kids who might be struggling is a great way to use them. Providing opportunities for your students to still work in small groups or one-on-one with these teens, whether in a breakout room or at a different time. All of those things will really help. One suggestion I can also make is having 2 screens going. And I know that not everybody has 2 computers. I don't either. But I have a little stand with my phone right next door to it. So perhaps the student, if they don't have a phone yet, could use a parent's phone during the half hour, 45 minutes that the class is online, and they could be on FaceTime with a teen madrich who's helping them while they're navigating the screen. You know, that's one way for them to get that extra support that they need while you're still in a remote learning. I have it set up like that right now, and I'm getting texts and feedback from Rebecca on the other side of the chat telling me, don't forget this, don't forget that. So, you know, we all need that extra support when we're doing this virtually and don't have our people near us. So let's think about how we can set that up for our students still. On the next slide, this is just an example of a sample what if chart. And these can be customized and individualized and recreated as many times as you need it to. It can be for the whole class. Maybe your what if is, well, what if I lose my login information? Try this, you know, first call, you know, your teacher, or call your buddy and then call your teacher. You know, what if I can't find my links? You know, whatever it is. Or it could be very individualized for a student. what if I can't sit still anymore? And then you're giving the student, what are their two options? I can't sit still anymore. You can stand up behind your chair and, do some stretches. If that's still not working, then, and later on in the presentation, we're going to talk about options for kids like that. So maybe try your offline choice board. You can customize it for individual students or for the whole class, and you can redo it as much as you want. Really simple to create. Like I said, you do need to spend a lot of time proactively thinking about all those what ifs. But, one of the best pieces of advice I ever got when I first started in this field was from Rick Lavoie, who said, when you're working with kids, you always plan for the worst case scenario. If you plan for every worst case scenario, you'll be fine. So we're sort of going back to that, basic piece of advice. You have, planning ahead so that in the moment, you don't have a kid who just logs off and says, well, I didn't know what to do, so I, left. David? Okay. This is a huge topic now, this idea of continuing best practices. There's an awful lot we're going to ram in here in the next few moments. Basically, over the last 3 months, we have all been bombarded with webinars, articles, suggestions. We have had to pivot and rethink so much of what we do. What's really important to remember is that the best practices that we were using in our face-to-face classes are still our best practices. We just need to maybe rethink what they're going to look like and how to implement them when we are now working in a remote setting. So Mia is going to jump in now.
All right, there we go. Now you guys can hear me. We've actually been talking at you for a very long time now, and so we want to take a moment to check in with you, just like we would encourage you to check in with your students if you're doing synchronized learning. So when we're in a classroom, check-ins are definitely more seamless, right? You can just go over to a student, even whisper in their ear or gently touch their back. But online, you may have to actually pause your class for a moment to see where everyone is. So we wanted to use this tool with you guys to get a feeling for that. So let's try it together. So what I'm asking you is, in this moment, how focused and present are you on what you're doing, right? We're acknowledging the fact that there's a lot going on, right? So a 0 would be, I'm here, but I'm hearing you, but I've also got all my emails going, my texts are going, my mind is somewhere else. A 7 would be, to the best of my ability, I'm here and I've turned off all the notifications that aren't emergent so that I can really, really focus. So you can think about the number between 0 and 7 where you are. And then is there anything you can control that you can maybe turn off to help you get closer to 7 if you're not already there? To help you move forward. And this can be really powerful because all of a sudden we're asking you guys and the students to check in on themselves. When I did this in a recent webinar, I was definitely on my phone checking my text messages. And as soon as this came up and I recognized where I was, I put my phone aside. So you can do this, and I didn't even ask you guys to put it in the chat, but you guys are doing it already, so that's awesome. You can also do it so that it's just private to you if you think your students don't want to publicly share that. So there's a lot of ways that you can share this information, or if you think your students are capable of it, you can have them just hold that number in their head and think about strategies that they can use to hopefully get closer to 7. Great. I see someone asked any reason you chose 7. To be honest, the webinar that I learned this strategy in, they did 0 to 7, so I did too. But you can do any number you want. Maybe it would be more appropriate at a Hebrew school to do 18. All right, David, if you want to switch the slide. All right, so we're going to move in a little bit to some strategies that we can use for students while you're teaching them. So in your classrooms, you guys may have had what we often call fidget tools. I like to call them focus tools because that's really what we want the students to do. We want them to help them focus. So I encourage you to use this document to help illustrate what the rules of the use of focus tools in your lesson would be. So maybe with you and the parents, you could come up with a small box of 2 or 3 focus tools that the students can have access to throughout your lesson. And what I would say is, you know, while you're at school, you can use focus tools to help you stay focused, because that's what they're there for. And here are all the ways you can use them. And so this illustrates, you could squish it, you could rub it, you could, you know, bend it, but your tool becomes a toy if you start to throw it, if you start to make loud noises with it, right? And so your prompt as the teacher would be, it looks like your tool has become a toy. Let's switch it out for something that could be a tool. And hopefully they have like that second and third option in their box near them or wherever they end up putting it in their workspace. Certainly, you could have students who run through all 3 tools that all become toys. And that's where you can open up the discussion of, wow, it looks like all of these tools have become toys. And there's great times when you can play with your toys. But when we're in school, it can be really hard for you to focus. Maybe a focus tool isn't your best option. Or you can even consider those 3 tools weren't effective for you. Let's think of 3 other tools that we could try out. As you'll see throughout this entire presentation, we are really big on visual supports. If you know Gateways at all, if you know Rebecca Redner at all, visuals are our happy place. So we're always going to encourage you to use visual supports. And if you think about your classroom, your physical classroom in the synagogue, if that's where you were teaching, you probably had a lot of visual supports up on the walls. And we're starting to recognize in these online forums that our students were using those visuals more than we might have even expected. So whenever you can put a visual up on your screen to help guide a student and remind them of what the expected behaviors might be or expected processes with a task are, we encourage you to do that. So they might be academic visuals, but they also might be reminders for appropriate behavior. You can turn it, there you go. So one of the number 1 visuals we always tell teachers to have in their classroom, or we encourage teachers to have in their classroom, is a schedule. Right? We make it predictable for the students so that they know what's coming next. They can see that there's light at the end of the tunnel if in case there's a subject or a task that they're not looking forward to. They can see that there's something coming after it that they will enjoy, or perhaps there's a break coming after it. Right? We always want to make it really predictable for the student so that that will decrease any sort of anxiety they're having about what is coming next. Other ways that you can make things predictable is sending a question a day or 2 in advance so the students can prepare for it. With the older students, if they have cell phones, a great app is called the Remind app, and you can use it to send information to students so that they don't have your cell number. It'll go straight to their text message, but they won't access your cell phone number. And this can be great. You can send a text just reminding them what materials they need, even 5 or 10 minutes before class starts, or even sending out other reminders about tasks that you'll be doing or presentations that may be taking place. So that can be a really nice one for students who have their own cell phones.
So just like in our class, we would have expectations for behavior and expected behavior. We need to have expectations for within our Zoom classrooms. And just like we would make them visual in some way and transparent to the kids, we need to do that with our Zoom classrooms at all. So this is some information. Mia pulled it out of a JedLab thread that was going on a few weeks ago. And this is the kind of thing you can create whatever the Zoom room expectations are. Different teachers might want to tweak them or have them be a little different for their classes, but you write them up, send them home, a parent can print it out, and becomes part of that toolbox we talked about earlier, so that the expectations and the things that a student would need are available for them. The one piece that I'm going to spend a couple of seconds on is the video on. We do recommend that kids keep their video on when you're in a class with them. Many students rely on the nonverbal and visual cues in order to follow along. It helps create a sense of community when people can see each other. And we also do know that kids are more likely to be engaged if their video is on. We know that as soon as kids turn their video off, we don't really know necessarily what they're doing. That being said, there are going to be children who come to you and say that they're not comfortable with their video on. And while the general expectation should be to have video on, you do need to be open to having that conversation with students. There are some legitimate reasons why a student would want their video off. In some cases, it is because they do behaviors that, you know, maybe they're the kid that used to sit in the back of the classroom so that people weren't looking directly at them. They're uncomfortable with, you know, that face-to-face look, or they do behaviors that they feel like they need a little more privacy for. I've also had children tell me they're very uncomfortable with other kids in their class being able to see into their home. You know, we have children who don't have, you know, right now we all have these nice setups. I've been having so much fun looking at everybody's offices and workspaces at home, but there are children who are don't have those kind of luxuries, and there are concerns about cyberbullying that happens outside of class time if there's too much of a visual glimpse into a child's private life. So you do want to be prepared to have those private conversations. And just like in a classroom, we have general expectations for everybody, and then we modify as needed for a specific child. You need to be ready to do that with your online experience as well.
So this is another example of, sorry, I thought I heard someone talking. This is another example of a visual that outlines the expected behaviors while on Zoom. So this particular classroom is called the Alon classroom. So that's why it says Alon Zoom expectations at the top. And it has, you know, just a really short, sweet, to the point expectation with a picture along with it. And the teacher would show this at the beginning of each class and review it with the students before every single class. So even knowing that it was being done, you know, multiple times a week or multiple times whenever they met, those consistent reminders and that consistency of the students knowing that this is how we start our class each week helps build in that predictability and helps remind them of what the expectations are. And then the teacher throughout the class, if they needed to redirect their student, they would refer back to these expectations. Oh, let's remember what's expectation, you know, number 2, right? We're going to use the chat appropriately, reminding them and taking the pressure off of all the instructions coming from you. You're now referring to this visual that had the rules written on it. Other things that we suggest in regards to visual supports is taking actual physical pictures of the materials that the students might need. So if your student is going to need their Hebrew book, a pencil, and a piece of paper, if we show them the actual visual of what their workspace should look like, it helps them to see what their workspace should look like. So I often had teachers who would show this picture up on their screen and then have the students move their cameras to show the picture so that they matched what they saw on the screen. And that let everyone know that we were ready to move forward with the learning. Go ahead, David. I think many of you might be considering doing large group gatherings on Zoom. So rather than it just being the class that might have anywhere between, you know, 5 to 15 students in it, you might gather the whole school for Kabbalat Shabbat or for tefillah or something along those lines. And so visuals can still be used for those opportunities as well. And it should be illustrated explicitly that in this context, the expectations for your behavior might actually be different than the behavior that you have in your smaller Zoom classrooms. So this is a great visual that Rebecca Redner made of whole body praying and breaks down what each of our body parts should be doing when we're engaging in tefillah as a community. So if you can keep this up on the screen while the tefillah is going, that would be great. Showing it before, somewhere even maybe in the middle, and then at the end to say, hey, did everyone feel like they were engaging in whole body praying? How can we do it better next time? Or what were our successes, and so on and so forth.
Okay, so universal design for learning. You know, children don't learn the same way. They didn't all approach learning the same way when they were in our classrooms, and they are not approaching learning the same way when they are learning remotely. You're going to have your students who like to go step by step by step, you know, following the directions like the girl on the left, and then you're going to have the boy who pictures the finished product and goes backwards. That same diverse approach to learning is still present in our classrooms when we're remote. So we want to remember to ask ourselves those UDL guideline questions that we would preach about face-to-face learning. David, if you want to advance it. Are we presenting our information and content in different ways? If you are thinking about doing live time classes with your students, the likelihood of a teacher being able to sit on one side of the computer screen and just talking or doing a lesson in one way and having it be accessible for students in different locations with different learning styles, it's not going to be your best mode of addressing those diverse learners. In the classroom, we often think about presenting it in different ways. You know, first it might be presented in the whole class, then we might do it in a small group. We might have a video going while we have the printed words for other kids to read. So thinking about how are you presenting the information and content in different ways. Are we differentiating the ways that students can express what they know? Are you asking the students to all fill in a worksheet and, you know, scan back a Google Doc to you? Or are you giving them opportunities to do hands-on creations or record themselves? Stimulating their interest and motivation for learning the why of learning. You know, these are our guiding questions from UDL, and they are critical now that we're online to make sure that we're creating spaces that are accessible to the diverse learning needs of the classes, of the students we're working with. We knew that one approach and one size fits all didn't work in the classroom, and it's not going to work remotely either. The next slide is a great picture of, this was an assignment that the Epstein Hillel School of the Marblehead gave. Right before Shavuot, the kids were told to create and show their best Mount Sinai. So these were just two of the projects that kids, quote, turned in. So it's kind of thinking about flipping your opportunities for learning. They did the work offline and then just presented and shared their final work when they came together as a group. And that's a great use of asynchronized and synchronized time that allows for the diverse learning styles and kinesthetic needs of some of their students. David? Manipulatives. If you were using manipulatives in your classroom, hands-on pieces to make learning multisensory, we have to still do that when we're remote. So these are just some examples of things that you could prepare and send home for that toolbox that we talked about. Popsicle sticks, that's a great way to create a manipulative with Hebrew letters. The cards that are there are from the Gateway's reading program. If you were going to be using a system like that, color-coded and with your students in the classroom, send them home so that the parents or whoever is going to be helping the child has them in front of them at home. Susan made turned her Legos collection into a Hebrew manipulative by just writing on the side, and kids can you know, physically manipulate and create words and letters. It's kind of like thinking about the concept of, like, you know, Blue Apron, where they send home all the ingredients for your meal and it shows up on your doorstep, and then you just have to mush it all together and cook and you've got your meal. So that's sort of what we're thinking about here too, is what else goes in that toolbox besides a, you know, notebook paper and a pencil. Maybe it's your Hebrew manipulatives or whatever else that you need to make this a hands-on learning experience for your students while they are away from you. These are just additional best practices that are the same ones that if you had asked us to consult with you when you were in your classrooms, these are pretty much the same things that we would be advocating for. Your students that needed wait time in the classroom to help pull together their thoughts or ideas are going to need that if you call on them on a Zoom call. If you had a student that you used to give a prompt to, Some of our students, we like to say, okay, I'm going to call on Sally and then John, and then it's going to be your turn. You're going to still want to do that when you're remote. You can send them a chat, or, through whatever system you're using to communicate. Okay, this is the lineup. First, we're going to call on so-and-so, then we're going to call on so-and-so. We've been doing that in chats, modeling and cueing. If you're going to be talking about what you want something to look like, or you're going to be asking them to then hop off the call and go do some asynchronized project, have that sample ready to show them so that they've got that visual of what's coming. The frequent check-ins, we've been trying to do that throughout this presentation, giving opportunities to check in, either on a social emotional level or content-wise, using the chat. Some of your kids are also going to need frequent check-ins outside of the class time. That is a big part of keeping those connections and support available for your diverse learners. Providing structure. How do you start your class time? How do you end your class time? As it needs to be predictable for the kids. They needed it when they were in your classroom. They need it when they're working remotely. Making sure that they have opportunities for participation. We're going to talk a little bit about that in the next few slides. Asking feedback from your students, just like we used to do exit tickets at the end of a class. That same concept when you're online. What was working for you? What are the online strategies we're using? What are the technology pieces that you're comfortable with? Get that feedback from them so that you can use that and build it into your next lessons with them. We teach necessary skills when we're face-to-face, and we really need to think about what are the new skills that students are going to need. There are things that are happening that we may not even know about. So we had a student who, Rebecca uses reaction cards. You'll see them in a few minutes. Kids can hold them up and share visually with their teacher and their classmates what they're thinking and what they're feeling about. And I had a parent tell me just last week, yeah, she used them, but no one ever responded to her because she didn't know where the camera was on her computer. So she wasn't holding them in a place that was visible. It wasn't something we realized was happening, and quite honestly didn't even dawn on us. And so now we've already built that in for next year, that one of the first things our teen volunteers and their students are going to do when they get together is practice. How are you visible in front of, where's the right spot to hold something up so that it's visible for your classmates? So thinking through what are some of those new skills. Are you going to be someone who puts links into a chat? Maybe your students need guidance and a step-by-step instruction for how do you get it from the chat to an outside link and then back into your Zoom call. So thinking about those skills that your students might need moving forward is going to be really helpful as well.
All right, so I'm going to talk about supporting behavior and some individual needs, and I'm specifically going to talk about challenging behavior. So I think this is the fun part. Just like you had challenging behavior probably in your regular, typical classroom makeup, we are starting to see some new challenging behavior in this new online setup. Some of the challenging behavior has gone away, to be honest. I can't even tell you how many teachers ask me, like, is there a mute button for these kids? And guess what, guys? There's a mute button all of a sudden. But that said, some newer behaviors have come up, and obviously we wouldn't mute our students all the time anyway. So I'm actually going to give you guys just a moment to read this hilarious and very creative tweet that went out by a teacher yesterday or a few days ago. So I'll just let that sink in. So, I mean, you got to give the kid credit. It's very, very smart. And by no means is this a training on how to use Zoom, but I cannot stress to you guys enough how helpful it is to watch the Zoom tutorials that are actually on the Zoom website, because they will teach you how to make that not happen. There are a lot of privacy settings and things that you can do to ensure that your students can't spell reconnecting incorrectly and then put it up on their screen. And there's multiple other helpful Zoom features that are going to make your teaching experience run a little bit smoother. All right, what I am going to focus on is preventative strategies. And the lens that I look at behavior through is that it all serves a function. It's a form of communication. And so I know that as teachers, especially online, we feel like from a distance, we can't do anything, right? Typically, you might go over to the student and ask them to stop engaging in that behavior, or you may pull them aside or out of the classroom to talk to them one-on-one. A lot of those things are really challenging to do in an online situation. And so your best line of strategies are the preventative ones. Let's stop the behaviors from occurring in the first place and focus on those positive preventative strategies. So ideally, you don't have to think of any of those negative consequences that might go along with challenging behavior. So establishing some break strategies is really important. Our students often engage in challenging behavior because they're trying to maybe escape or avoid a task or a situation that makes them uncomfortable. And so teaching them to take a break appropriately is going to be a really nice way for them to be able to escape or avoid a task in a socially appropriate way. So as a class, you might want to come up with some nonverbal ways that they can share with you how they can take a break, right? So we gave a few examples. Maybe they'll put their head down on their desk. Maybe you'll have a flip card that lets them show it up on the screen that, you know, I need a moment. They might send you a private chat message of some sort, right? So you want to provide them with those socially appropriate ways to ask for a break so that they don't start looking for the more disruptive ways to get a break. For students who might take advantage of those breaks, sorry, David, one more moment on that other side. For those students who might be concerned might take advantage of the breaks, you can put limitations on it. I often use like get out of work free cards type thing. And so you might offer 2 or 3 during your lesson. And then once those are all used, right, they've run out of break cards. You have to determine if that's an appropriate strategy for your class or for individual students or not, but that can be a nice way to help limit them from taking advantage of this idea that I can take a break when I might need one. All right. Other ways to hopefully address any sort of what we call escape motivated behavior, right? So that might be in the topography of that might be turning off their screen or leaving the class completely, not completing certain work, right? All this escape or avoidance of the work that might be occurring is trying to incorporate their interests, right? We know kids are watching a lot of Netflix right now. We know that you might know your class is really into Pokemon. So trying to incorporate their interests into the curriculum to some capacity is going to help keep them focused a lot longer. So I'll give you an example on the next slide. There's this great, this is a great clip of a student working from home, synchronized. You're going to see her engaging in synchronized learning with her teacher, and her mother comes up to her wondering what is happening. There's a certain Jewish holiday occurring while she is learning, and so I'm going to leave it to you guys to watch the clip to see how the teacher has incorporated the Jewish holiday into the learning experience, even though right at this moment, the student's actually learning about math.
8 sides. So I'm going to draw a regular octagon. Remember, a regular octagon means that all of the sides of the octagon are equal.
Gabi?
Same length.
Why are you under here?
Octagon that I
supposed to be learning in a cave.
Oh, because it's Lag BaOmer.
And what does
So I thought this was a beautiful way to incorporate the traditions of Lag BaOmer. The teachers had all the students create caves in their rooms, and all of their lessons for the week leading up to Lag BaOmer were done in their caves. And it was such a beautiful experience for all of the students, the teachers. Obviously, the mom was a little confused, so you might want to send out a memo to the parents beforehand that, you know, their kids are doing this based on your instructions. I also wanted to share another example of incorporating interest. This is a great website to use. It's called Voki.com, and it provides you the opportunity to actually have your voice come out of an animated character. So I did one for if you were learning about kashrut. I'll show that to you.
Today we're going to learn about the laws of kashrut. We're going to learn about foods that are kosher and foods that are not kosher. So take a wild guess. Do you think that I'm kosher?
So again, just finding ways for them to stay focused on the screen by incorporating, funny and silly types of anecdotes or videos, right? We can take advantage of this idea that we are using the screen probably more so than you would in your typical classroom. I'm just going to wait for David to bring up the screen again. All right. So Sandy talked a lot about having parent support and how that can help keep students focused. And certainly that's really, really important. But I think one of the areas that we want to focus on and a life skill that we can provide to students moving forward is this opportunity to practice their self-monitoring skills, right? We can foster that self-monitoring and that ability to self-reflect of how focused am I, how accurate am I, or how well am I doing at following the expected behaviors. All of those things we can teach them ways to self-monitor. So I provided a few examples. One is on the next slide of a simple check-in form, right? It's time to work. So here is what I need to do. Have I removed all the distractions from my workspace? Am I sitting and standing comfortably? So we've listed a few things that might be in your typical, that you might want your classroom students to be engaged in while they are working with you. So this document is available on the website we were talking about, so you'll have access to it. But I encourage you guys to edit it and make it your own and make it a good fit for your classroom. And you can use this self-monitoring form at the beginning, in the middle, and at the end of your class and refer to it throughout the class lesson. Have your students continuously check in on themselves and monitor how they're doing. The next one I'm going to show you, I apologize in advance. I recognize it is very small and quite blurry, but I still think it's a good example, and we have provided it also on the webpage. Actually, you know what? I don't think I sent it in time. We will add it to the webpage. My apologies. But basically what this is outlining for students on the left-hand side what the expected behavior is. So, right, I completed my work, I sat using whole body listening. You might add a few more other options in there. And what you're asking is at the end of each period or task that you're doing in your class, you're having the student rate where they are, right? One, would be that I did not follow any of the expected behaviors. Two would be I followed it most of the time, and three is I followed it all of the time. And one of the things I also encourage is, as a teacher, you may want to put in a rating too and see if your student is matching what you are rating, so that they start to recognize and accurately identify what their behavior is like. I do have some teachers who then, collect the points, and as a group, they're trading it in for something fun. You might watch like a silly clip on YouTube at the end of class if they've reached a certain number of points. That's completely up to you and finding what's a goodness, again, fit for your classroom. But again, just finding creative ways for them to help self-monitor their behaviors. So those are just two examples of it. Another way to help with that kind of escape motivated behavior as well as attention motivated behavior, because we certainly have a lot of students in our classroom who engage in challenging behaviors to access attention, whether it's negative or positive. So we want to think of ways that we can have them participate and be actively involved and engaged and get attention for the positive behaviors as opposed to negative ones.
So this is an example of show and tell reaction cards. Rebecca made these for a class she was teaching. You can easily create them. She used Boardmaker. You can use them with clip art. She giving students a way to participate instead of waiting for it to be their turn, which is hard for so many of our kids. So these got sent home ahead of time. Parents printed them out. Kids and the parents cut them apart, and then they could sit there, and while someone else was sharing their project and what they had done, the other kids in the class were holding up these reaction cards so they could be visible, and letting everybody else know that they thought it was great, they thought it was cool. It's a way of keeping kids engaged. If you can also do it really easily. You can ask kids to take a piece of paper and on one side write yes and on the other side write no. And they could always, you can engage them with yes, no questions or true, false. And there's Mia holding hers up in the window, and I hope you can see her. She made hers out of toilet paper tubes and pieces of paper across the top. You can ask kids to have a green object and a red object. Green is go, yep, so anyway, thumbs up, thumbs down, but building in those ways for students to participate and not just wait.
Other ways for students to access attention in a positive way is providing students with some sort of special role. So maybe you'll have the student who's always looking for that attention tell a joke at the beginning of your Zoom class, or read a certain section of a book or other thing that you guys might be focusing on that day. Have them take attendance even. For students who I find really struggle to pay attention throughout the class on Zoom, I sometimes ask them to take data on me, the teacher. So I ask them to take a tally mark of how many times I say the word And I'm sure if many of you were taking data on that right now, it probably happened a lot throughout this presentation, or how many times I scratched my nose, or right? So it's giving them something to focus on, right? If they weren't focused at all, at least they're now doing this. And we don't know how much actual content they're taking in, but it's better than them being distracting to other students, and hopefully will guide their attention towards the important pieces of what you're sharing. In that regard, the next slide has an example of what we call bingo boards. So this is great if you are doing a certain subject, having a bingo board and having students circle when they hear you say that word. So if you're telling the story of Passover, you're more than likely to say one or more of these words throughout the telling of that story. So now they are focused, they have their hands busy, and that's another piece of all of this, keeping the students' hands busy, putting bingo markers on their board keeps them from having their hands being busy doing possibly inappropriate or disruptive things. So that's a really nice way of thinking of behaviors that you can have them engage in that are incompatible with the challenging behaviors that they could be engaging in. Another example of that is taking a poll. David, I'm just going to ask you to jump in. Do we want to do this just given the time? No. Okay. So we were going to actually... Yeah, so we were going to actually have you guys do the poll, but that's another reason to check out the Zoom tutorials, because there's actually a way through Zoom that you can have your students do this really cool online poll through the Zoom features. So you might have, if you have a student who really likes having attention, this would be a great way to ask them to present the poll to everybody. Have them choose the 3 favorite holidays or the 3 favorite Torah stories or whatever your topic is going to be. And they can feel like they're participating in, again, getting attention for the right things instead of the wrong things. For older students, I often use the if you can't beat them, join them mentality, right? So if your students are older and they have their own phones, they might be on their phones during your lesson. So if they're going to be on their devices, encourage them to use the phone to text you answers, right? So that's where the Remind app can come in really handy. If they have, the Zoom window open on one side of their screen, but they're surfing the web on the other side of the screen, figuring out when the NBA is going to come back, right? Let's take advantage of that and maybe tell them to, today we're going to learn about the kotel. I'm going to give you 5 minutes to learn about the kotel online, do a Google search and come back with 3 interesting facts. So really just building in what they're already using to your lesson. Next slide. All right, student presentations. This is also a really nice way to give students who are looking for attention that opportunity to shine and allow the students to present. It also gets you to stop speaking and gives them the opportunity to be in the spotlight.
Okay, so asynchronized learning choices. Susan and Mia and I went through all of the questions that you submitted ahead of time, and in answer to a lot of your questions about how to differentiate and accommodate different learning styles and different levels within a classroom is not to necessarily stay on a Zoom call with all of them, but to think about building an asynchronized learning time. So this is an example of a choice board about Israel. So let's say you were teaching a unit on Israel and you came up with these 12 different activities or assignments that the students were going to need to work on. And oftentimes the order that they do them in isn't actually relevant, but you may have to, if you do have something that you want them to do first, you might need to highlight that. But this is a way that you can differentiate for different learning levels, because you could have different activities built into each of these categories. So like for the box, it says learn 10 new Hebrew words. You could have 10 different vocabulary lists going depending on the level of the students in your class. If you were going to create a travel itinerary for an imaginary trip to Israel, you could have some of your students building in 5 places to go visit, and you might have others who come up with 2, and that's okay. They'd be doing this offline. This also helps with that scenario that we have where parents aren't necessarily available at the times when we had been running Hebrew school. Remember, they used to have, some of them had a babysitter or a nanny or somebody, or carpool, drop their kid off, and they weren't necessarily finished with work yet. So this is a great way to address that issue, because if they're coming together for a shorter Zoom time, we have actually found that about 30 minutes is the productive time period for most of the kids that we've been working with. And beyond that, you just start to lose them. I know that even in like the Carroll School and a lot of the special ed schools, they're doing 30 minutes and then a break, and the kids don't come back for another 20, 25 minutes. So that's not necessarily realistic in a religious school setting to keep taking breaks and coming back, but it's switching the way that you're approaching the learning and building in this asynchronized learning time so that the students are doing it when they can get the support from their families, and then coming back to share and have that sort of community experience in a shorter dose is something that is really helpful to answer a lot of those questions that you guys have been throwing out there about the timing and the differentiation. And Mia put into the chat, I saw we were using a platform called Flipgrid, which allows kids to watch a video recording that the teacher makes and then record their answer back. They just click on a button and the computer records them and it sends back. And that's a great tool to help you with your asynchronized learning activities. Susan?
Yep. So as we near the end of our session, we're just going to take a minute or two to talk about making shared materials accessible. And what we mean by that is when you do share your screen. So there are 3 tools. I'm not going to show you all 3. We'll just go through one of them. And again, this is not about this is not a training on how best to utilize Zoom. We encourage you to advocate for yourselves. But the 3 areas that I use quite frequently are highlighting important information, blocking out extra information, and providing reinforcement. So David, I'm going to have you skip the next one and go to the one after that. So as you'll see, I'm going to speak while it's going. I often use this in tutoring. So there can be a lot of words on a page. And for some students, that's visual noise. And even if students can handle that, it doesn't hurt them not to have extra words on the page. So often, I want to make sure this is the right one. Oftentimes, as you see right there, there's an annotation tool right in Zoom where I can just, white out all the extraneous words so that a child can focus. So that's just an example of one. David, I'm going to have you skip the next one. And yes, good. So here are some other good ideas, and I will, this Google slide presentation is available to you, so you can read through this on your own. But on the last one, I want to show you an example of creating a video to be used in teaching. So David, I'm going to have you go to that one. And we'll go through the first few words.
Shema Yisrael
Adonai Eloheinu.
You can stop that.
Adonai.
Okay, great. Thank you for being patient. We're not going to take you through all of that. This is great. This can be used in breakout rooms. It can be used for support at home. You can do it with pictures for non-readers. It's a really wonderful tool that can be downloaded. Okay. Again, I am going to have you read this on your own. These are critical supports that we can put into place when we share our materials. And we're going to go to the next slide and show you what that might look like. So if you take a look at this, this is something that I do use that I share with one of my students. And you'll see there's a visual at the top, a little boy reading, and it says read the prayer. So in addition to my verbal instructions, I have a picture there as well. You will see the size of the letters. And the type of font being used is very easy to read. You'll notice there is a lot of white space, both vertically and horizontally, and that helps the students focus. And you'll notice that it is broken up into syllables. This particular student had a difficult time with the O vowel, and so I was able to use the Zoom tools and go in there and put in the orange. One last thing is I would say to make sure when you create a document, create it as a PDF so it can be enlarged.
And then finally, we want to end with this idea of one size doesn't fit all. And remote learning might look very different class to class within your school. You know, even within our Gateways program, we have one class that typically when they're meeting face-to-face does center-based learning and another class that does group projects. That same thing is going to be true when you move to online. When you're planning for what your school is going to look like, you may need to be flexible and accept that different teaching styles and different student needs might make each classroom look different even within your online school. And for students, it might look different. We're going to have to be flexible. You have to be ready to switch approaches midway. We did that at Gateways in the 2.5 months we were online. I think we did 3 different approaches till we figured out what works best for our students. And I think the biggest piece with religious schools to think about is that in this setting where we're doing shorter class periods, it might be that some students need one-to-one learning in order to make the academic progress. You might have families, when you go back to the beginning and we talked about reestablishing expectations and goals, it might be that a family has changed what their goal is for the student. But you also have families that are like, no, I still want my child ready to do a bar mitzvah. They have to learn the Hebrew. They have to do this. They have to do that. And it may be that you need to build in one-to-one time for that student, depending on what their needs are. So, you know, a child may need that one-to-one time with a tutor to do Hebrew, where they're using all these kind of tricks and tools that Zoom has that Susan was alluding to, so that it can be customized and individualized for that student. They might need the tactile supports that you're sending home, and thinking about how to create that one-on-one time for the student. As we talked about, we have really, the best practices are really suggesting that 30 minutes is about the ideal time for a student to be in a Zoom class and still be attentive and productive. So exploring and preparing for alternative learning options, such as the asynchronized learning options that would take place at different times, is going to be a really critical way to keep your curriculum going. And then the bottom line is, sometimes you do all these things we've talked about and all the best practices and all the proactive planning, and it still doesn't work. And you're still going to have a child that, for whatever reason, on any given day, it's just not working. So you want to be proactive, because in the classroom, you saw a student wasn't able to be present in that moment, and you could say to your aide or teen, hey, why don't you take so-and-so to the other side and read a book or do a puzzle. So using an offline activity option board is a way to still have the child engaged in Jewish education, but not necessarily with the group in that time. So there's an example of this on the website that you can look at. you can brainstorm with families ahead of time. What are the things that you would be comfortable or feel good about your child doing if for some reason they couldn't participate in religious school that day, because we don't want them just not doing. So this would also tie in with your what if chart. What if I can't sit still? You know, the first option is taking one of the breaks. Third option could be this, you know, choosing an activity from your offline activity board. So it's just, you know, a concrete way of really trying to accommodate all the what ifs and diverse learning needs before they come up. You can use private chat or texting to signal whoever's working with the child that they might need some additional support on that day. Because in the end, you know, we can plan and be the best teachers, but sometimes it's just not going to work for everybody. So we really appreciate all of you sticking with us for so long. We did not realize we had so much to say. So, and we know there were a lot of questions in the chat. We hope we got to a lot of them. I know there was a question specifically about visual impairments, which I don't think we addressed quite specifically. The quick suggestions that I would say before, if you're still here and listening, really think about building in some of that one-to-one teaching time for that student. Think about sending home materials, making sure that things can be enlarged and tactile for that student. Using auditory supports. Flipgrid might be a great tool for them to be able to hear some of the Hebrew and be able to be practicing prayers. I think it also comes back to what are the goals for that parent, you know, what does the parent have as a goal for that child? And we find it really helpful when we set up meetings with the support staff for a child who has such specific needs with their school. So we have a student with visual impairments who goes to the Perkins School, and they've been very helpful providing us with materials and supports as we've worked with her over the years. So it's something to think about, like reach out to that mom or dad and say, hey, could we talk to your child's special ed support from school? Because they might be able to give you some really good suggestions to how to address that particular child's learning needs. I know we are over our time. I'm not sure if we got to everybody's questions. We really try to. Rebecca, can you type into the chat my email address in case people wanted to reach out, maybe put the three of us in there so that if, and yourself, because Rebecca is the person I always go to with the questions after someone sends them to me. Feel free to email any of us. We would love to continue this conversation. You know, the fact that so many of you cared so much to take all this time and be thinking about, you know, we call them our kids, but they're everybody's kids. It means a lot to us that so many people are being proactive and thinking, and we're really looking forward to continuing these conversations with everybody. Let us know what would be helpful. Do we want, you know, if you think like another webinar like this one after the year gets started, or maybe like an online chat group, you know, if you have ideas, please share with us. We'd love to hear from you. You know, Gateways is here to support you, and we want to make sure we're hitting the mark and giving everybody what they could really use. Rebecca, what happened to the Google Docs that you were working on for us?
All right, so I've been populating the Google Docs and monitoring the chat as it comes in. So David, I don't know if you have the Celebrating Our Successes open on your screen, but I have about a page and a half worth of things that people have shared that have been wonderfully successful. And I have, at this point, about a page and a half of questions as well.
You mean questions we haven't answered yet?
Unfortunately, everybody has been coming up with such amazing questions.
So what I'm going to suggest is that Rebecca and Mia and Susan and I get together in the next day or so and try to answer some of these questions on that Google Doc, and then we can, we have the Zoom registration link, right, David? So we'd be able to theoretically send out a link to that Google Doc after we answer those questions.
Yes. We can certainly send out the Google Docs that we've created, the link to the resources, the PowerPoint, and anything else associated with the webinar.
Some people asked if the webinar is going to be available. We are going to have it up on our website. It probably usually takes a few days for us to get it up there. And I know, David, someone else asked if we could share the slides. So I think Rebecca, I was trying to monitor the chat at the same time. I think Rebecca said that we would download a PDF of the slides and make that available on the
those will be
website as well.
on the same resources page, yes.
David, someone just recently asked if they can share the recording with their faculty. Is that allowed?
What we'll be doing is putting the recording up on that same resources page. Everything will be there. It'll probably take a couple of days to get the recording up, but we will put it up there.
So, and then it can be shared.
Then it can be shared, yeah.
Okay.
Anyone, even if you have teachers who are in China.
Great.
And we just got a very good question. Will the participants here receive an email when the video has been put up? I think they're very eager to know when that happens.
Yes, we can send it to everyone as you enter your email into the to register. We'll send out a group email with all the materials, including this recording.
Anybody, any last questions? So again, thank you all so much. We've really appreciated your time that you spent with us. We appreciate all the questions, which make us, dig even deeper than we have already done. You help us be better. You help each other be better at what we're doing. And it's going to be an interesting start to the school year in the fall, and we're looking forward to jumping in and doing it all with you. My kids still like High School Musical. We're all in this together.
And lastly, I want to thank, of course, Sandy, Susan, and Mia for their terrific presentation, for Rebecca for manning the chat board, and lastly to CJP. We get funding every year from CJP to be able to provide professional development to the Boston community and beyond, and we're really happy and delighted to be able to do that, and we want to continue that throughout the year. Thank you all.
Thanks.
Bye, guys. Thank you.